This podcast and all of its content is not intended to be medical advice and is meant only for general discussion and opinions on topics of interest that may even be highly controversial. Always consult your physician for medical advice.
Welcome to the SoulMirror Experiences podcast, where we encourage the exploration of our souls, ranging from meditations to discussions with professionals on all things related to whole wellness. We're your hosts,
Rett
and Kat, coming to you with
cutting-edge topics on spirituality and consciousness
and some weird-ass stuff
that might just blow your mind. Welcome, everybody, to the SoulMirror Experiences podcast. I am Rett.
And I'm Kat. This is part 2 of shame and empowering ourselves against it. I would like to just put a little plug in for our event December 28th in Salt Lake City, Utah. We are really excited to continue towards this event. We have our first one this Tuesday, and tickets are still open. I'm excited for today. Rhett, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and Jack is doing great. He's here. He's finally calmed down. He's no longer chewing the rubbish bags all over the place and making noise. That's what he does before podcasts. I don't know, he's the producer. He does what he wants.
He does what he wants. He lives his best life.
He does. Well, last week we talked about shame. We talked about a few tools for empowerment based on our self-perception and understanding our true identity through authenticity. Now we're going to continue talking about shame and the victim mentality, more ways to empower ourselves through authenticity.
And focusing more on the mindset, focusing more on self-talk as well as thoughts that we have, maybe how to respond to other people in a way that doesn't set you up to be a victim or manipulate the situation in a way to put yourself in victimhood, because a lot of us do that just trying to be polite and not hurt people's feelings and be acceptable and make everything convenient for everyone else. And does any of this sound familiar?
That's right. So we're going to jump into victim thinking and how we can have more tools to use to empower ourselves out of it in the many, many situations in life that we go through.
Yeah, this could be relationships, interactions, even just with yourself. I think the most important thing, just continuing from episode 5, going into episode 6, which is today, is that I want you to know that you are in control, and I want you to be able to have those tools. Some of those tools you're going to have to get from a therapist or a doctor, but I want to give you what we can in order to empower you and help you see that you are in control. And when you're in control, you don't have to be afraid.
What things should we talk about today?
Probably the shoulds and the have tos, the shoulds, not should nots. And I think also we should talk about insecurity and control. We should talk about self-talk and our self-thoughts, as well as how we talk to other people.
So we've said should so many times. Maybe we're going to talk about that first. Shan't we?
We could. Yes, let's talk about it.
Okay, so the word should is very interesting to me because it implies something. Whenever we use words like should or have to, there's a base belief that that's built upon. And what do you
kind of like a delusional is a strong word, but like a figment of our imagination. There's this expectation that is created in your mind.
Yeah, and it comes from somewhere else. Well, we think it comes from somewhere else.
But it might just come from us.
It absolutely does come from us, but we think it's from somewhere else. That's what's the magic of the empowerment part of this, and why authenticity is so strongly related to shoulds and have tos type of thing. So let's start with a little mental exercise. So I'm going to ask Kat, what's something in your life that you have to do from your list of many things?
Well, something I feel I have to do is work.
Okay. So everyone at home, think of something. Get your journals out because this is a journaling exercise.
Or you can just listen.
That's true. Yeah, right. Write it down in your heart. Tattoo it all over your back.
Oh my gosh.
Because then you'll never forget it.
Inside a heart.
Yes, there you go.
Lots of lace.
This is the beginning of an empowerment stage.
Oh, geez.
Okay, now, why do you have to show?
I mean, I'm nervous, but I'm excited.
Nervously excited. So, okay, let's dig that down. So you have something in your mind, you have to do it. What does that even mean, first of all? And really think about that. Why do you have to do this? Why do you feel that way?
The first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about a work situation, and again, this is hypothetical, but coming from real experience, right, is that if I ever wake up and I'm like, oh man, I have to go to work today. I really don't want to go to work today. I guess I have to, because if I don't, da 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 da. Okay, so all of that da 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 is like, I won't be able to pay rent. I'll let people down. I will, I don't know, upset or disappoint people. I'll make things harder for other people. So basically, the fear is that I will be a massive inconvenience and potentially lose my job or not be able to meet my responsibilities.
Okay. So everyone can hear, Jack really is not helping out with the podcast today. But you're supposed to be the producer, but instead he's chewing garbage can, plastic bags, and jumping all over the place. That's
trying
how he
to
contributes.
Eat my food.
Yeah. So thanks, Jack. Okay. We still love you. Okay. So that's something you have to do, and you feel like everyone has to do, like work, for example, their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would probably say work is an easy one because everyone has work, right?
Okay. So we all have these things in our minds. Now, there's a optical illusion type of picture of the old woman that if you look at it long enough, it becomes like the young woman. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a picture, and if you look at it, you either see a young woman or you see an old lady with
Okay. Yeah. So you could,
yeah.
There's other ones too with like an old man or a tree or, like stuff like that.
Okay. I actually think that victim thinking and empowerment is kind of like this as well.
It's interesting to just kind of see what our mind associates the shapes of the image with first.
Right. And so empowerment and authenticity is very much like this, because you're looking at a picture and we're thinking that things in life are what we have to do or what we should do. But we're going to start boiling down these to their essence. The essence that we're looking for is actually a belief. And that belief is your belief. And
it could be connected to a value too. Like, I think all of our beliefs are connected to something in our value system, whether it's a healthy value or not.
It definitely is. I would say all of them are connected to a value. So I would agree. So let's boil that down. So let's go back to the example. Do you have to go to work? Really? Do you have to? Like, what does that actually mean? What are the reasons now? Let's actually dig a little deeper. This is a good journaling exercise for anyone out there. Go ahead and write down your list of things that you have to do. And let's just take one of them. And I want you to take that item, take work. Why?
Because I don't want to inconvenience others.
Okay.
But that's not a have to. Like, I don't have to go to work.
Good. Let's keep going with this thought.
Yeah.
So you've listed some things. A lot of things that would inconvenience other people is one reason why you felt that way. What are some other things or consequences? So we're avoiding.
I think the real consequence would just be a paycheck. But there's plenty of other jobs that would be more fulfilling if that were the case, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't be limited to that job. So in reality, like, they're not in control of me, and I can choose to leave at any time if it's not fulfilling my needs. And that would include spiritually or emotionally and physically, right? It's not just the paycheck that I go to work for. And as a person who pays people to do things for me, I try to create an environment that, they want to come, they want to show up. And if they really are having one of those days, that they can communicate that and not be afraid of negative repercussions.
Okay. So a lot of things that we feel we have to do, there are negative repercussions in our mind, first of all. Okay, so here's how to take every have to in your life and turn that around. Usually the have tos, there's a whole list of negative consequences that you're thinking of. And you can just list those out. and simply reverse that thing. So for example, I have to go to work because if not, well, of course I can't be homeless. Of course I'm not going to starve to death and not have food. Could be one way you look at that. Simply reverse that. So in other words, you want to have food and you want to have shelter over your head. And that is why you want to go to work, and that is why you are going to work. So now you've flipped it around from a not having something or avoiding some negative consequence to what is the actual state of existence that you want to be in. So that's a root of authenticity. It's getting down to the value of how you want to exist and how you want to be. It also overlays another major fact, and that is that in every single situation in your life, you have two options. One is you take the power and responsibility in your life and you use it, you own it. Two is you give it away. Truthfully, never is it actually taken away from you. You actually give it away. Now, of course, there are examples where there's definitely power taken away from you. There's not optimal situations. For example, if you're held prisoner, it's not like there isn't some measure of power taken from you. But what I'm saying is the measure of responsibility you take in your life is always your choice to react to it and do what you will with it. And once you realize it, that's what unlocks this authenticity. So for example, again, turning that thing around of having to go to work, instead of looking at it as negative consequences will happen, it's like, yeah, I want to have food. So it doesn't matter how terrible your job is that you think it is. You're going there because you want to. And once you realize that that's what you're doing, and once you boil that down, that picture flips. Suddenly, now you realize, okay, I am doing things because I want to. You absolutely are. It doesn't mean it's the most exciting option for you. It doesn't mean it's the best thing you could dream in your wildest dreams. But in the situation you're in and that you have in your existence, you're choosing exactly what you want. And it's the way it is. By saying you have to do it, all you really do in that situation is deflect the responsibility to something else and give it away. But again, think about that. Think about how powerful you are. Because you either keep it to yourself or you give it away. Either way, it's your choice and you're doing it. No one can take away your power to react the way you choose in any given situation. No one can. Now, that may not sound so incredibly mind-blowing, but if you sit with that thought and really think about it, it's the most empowering thing ever, and it will change the way you live. So that's another thing to think about. Which would you rather do? Keep the power to yourself or give it away? If you keep the power to yourself, you unlock more doors for yourself. You start to see a bigger vision. You start to exist in a way that's more because of what you want to do and how you want to be than it is mindless, or than it is being fed things you're supposed to do, quote unquote. Then shame. Like shame is not guiding you anymore. It's something from within you, and it's literally just by being you. Now let's keep looking at this picture and see if it starts to switch to another image. Let's keep looking at that and put want in there somewhere and figure out how what you're doing is actually what you want to do. So let's look at that same example. Why is it that you want to go to work? Start looking from the viewpoint of what things do you want in your life and how is that matching what you're doing?
Oh, this is so interesting. Okay, well, I want to go to work because I want to make a difference. I want to help people. I want to make connections. I just want to share. I want to create. I want to host. I want to organize. I want to serve. I just want to interact. Like that is why I go to work. That's why I do what I do. That's why I start my own business, because I'm like, I need to have that aspect fulfilled, you know? But I think this is interesting because I started with kind of this almost preempting, because I know we're talking about shame, we're talking about victim mindset, and so I didn't even answer. So I'm gonna I feel like we should back that up just slightly.
Should we?
So if I were to summarize this process, you asked me very clearly, what is something you feel like you have to do? And I said work. And then immediately I started covering my butt. Immediately. Because
We all do.
I was like, oh crap, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And I'm a professional and I don't want this to reflect badly on me. And at the same time, I'm also, I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain it, but you guys all listen to it. So then you were like, well, hold on. Let's not talk about that stuff. Let's look at why. And that brought me back to a whole different mindset because I didn't even realize, well, me not wanting to go to work and expressing I don't want to go to work, it really is me saying I want to go to work, but it's not fulfilling my needs.
Yeah, so a couple things happened there. It's great that you have a fulfilling work, first of all, and that's a key point. There may be some listeners who not only don't want negative repercussions of being homeless, but also really don't enjoy their work. So that's like a double whammy. So the point of this, when you're looking and reframe it, I would say the other thing you want is also money and income.
Oh, definitely. I think everyone wants stability.
Yeah, stability, or to have something in your life that you can have power to do with and to live in a certain way. So, okay, we're changing that picture now from things that you have to do to things that you want to do. And just that thought process, you started mentioning things that you really enjoy. So now our mind changes from like, oh, people will be disappointed, or, oh, shoot, I don't know, I'll be broke, and I don't know, it'll be painful, it'll be all these things. And now instead you're thinking from a perspective, well, oh, look, I want these type of experiences. I want this. How do you want to live? What kind of house would you like? What kind of living would you like? Just
a small, cute house with lots of land.
Okay. So here's the beauty of it. If we can do this every day, it's hard. Believe me, everyone's going to wake up and be like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. But if every time you look at that and you say to yourself, wait a minute, wait. I want to. Why? Because I want money. So if that's the only reason you're going to work right now, you can at least reframe it that way. What that does, it puts the power back in you.
So it could be like, I want to go to work, not because I don't want to let people down, but because I have goals and I'm working towards them.
Yeah. So in other words, a victim mentality is that you have to do something. A victim mentality, and we all do this. So I'm just saying a victim mentality is, oh, it's like the shame too. It's like someone told me this or I'm that, and it's not self-directed. So the two parts of authenticity, since this is about empowerment through authenticity, is our self-awareness and our self-direction. When we put the power outside of ourselves, we are we're giving that power away. When we say we want something, it does two things. One, it gives the power back in our hands. If you have a crappy job you hate, but you realize you're going there because you want to, now you start to think that picture changes into a different image of you doing something because you want to. Now your mind starts to think of things you want. Now, take that further. This is where star charting or thinking of your possibilities comes into play. Now when you think and your whole life is lived out of a way you want, you're going to start attracting just that idea. You're going to be looking for it. The little house with land all around it, that's out there somewhere. And if we focus on that, then all of your actions, it may be to change a job. Maybe you realize that. And now because you're thinking of what you really want, you're going to start looking for possibilities to change that job and still get the money, or at least be open to it rather than, being in our mindset of limitations.
And I guess what I really liked about what you did is just that it completely changed the mindset. Like completely. And that happened genuinely on air. And for a second I was fighting it, but it was just like, holy crap. Like I don't have to work so that I can get money and not let people down. But it's like, no, I want to work because I have dreams that I'm working towards. And then specifically with that job, do I want that job? Does it fulfill me? Does it fulfill the path to my dreams? Or do I want another job? And you might realize that, oh yeah, this job isn't so bad. I think I do want this, and then other times you might be like, oh wow, this job is not very healthy for me.
Truly. And so we used one example of jobs. We're going to do another episode on relationships because that one.
Oh, geez. I mean, we can apply this to relationships. We can apply it to religion. You know, it could be like, oh man, I have to do this because everyone else wants me to do this, or blah, blah, blah. Like you could say that for anything.
Truly.
Anything from work to relationships to religion to hanging out with friends. I mean, dude, if you feel that way about your friends, maybe you should like change the crowd you're hanging out with. Not because they're bad people, but because you also need to be fulfilled.
Yeah. So words that we're talking about here, like shoulds and have tos, what makes them very powerful in our lives, and the reason why boiling things down to that essence of where it comes from is because they're all based on some value that you have in your life. So like when we're saying should, there's something in you that you believe, and that's the important thing to find. So a couple ways I look at that. For example, when I say I have to, that already implies the victim thinking. That already implies the belief that I'm not in control of me. Something else is. That's why I have to. So that's one powerful way of just reframing it to I want to. It suddenly changes. It's coming from a different belief. That picture is changing to a whole different thing. It's the same world, but suddenly you're in control of you. That's the authenticity.
Yeah, because it's you going after what you want.
Yeah.
Instead of you letting this imaginary expectation control you. And I think it would be important to note as well that responsibilities is different than shoulds and have tos. In my mind.
Okay.
Responsibility is like like if you're a parent, you have a responsibility, right?
Okay.
Or if you are in a committed relationship, you have a responsibility to be in that relationship. If you are wanting that relationship, right? But not that you can do that with your kids though. but I think you're understanding now, like a should and a have to is kind of like this figment of your imagination, this expectation that like you have to fulfill this delusional version of yourself, whereas like a responsibility or a duty is more like reality. Okay. If that makes sense.
It does. It's interesting. Let's take that because I actually believe you can transmute that as well.
Oh, geez.
But let's take that thought process. It is a tough one. I believe me. I totally. I'm on the same page. I have kids and
like we need to plan responsibly.
Yeah.
Because we have responsibilities, right? But so what we're saying is don't up and leave your kids or your
right.
spouse or your partner or whatever just because you're having a bad day. What we're saying is like
let's just take the example. So that goes back to a have to. A responsibility goes back to. Let's take it. Let's take one. Okay, let's create a scenario here. Let's just say, so Kat, you're going to act as though, let's say you have children in a educational institution or something. So let's just role play so that you can sort of represent people out there who may have children and can relate to this type of scenario. So just go ahead and respond as though you were to have children in a educational institution, and that's one reason why, of course, you need money from a job. So just go through this thought process with me. Think of something you have to do regarding your children then. Yeah, let's do that.
Pay tuition.
Okay, so you have to pay tuition. Why?
So they can get an education.
Okay. I mean, do you want them to have an education?
I do.
Okay. So there's already ways.
But I don't want to pay the tuition.
Okay. So let's keep reframing this.
Okay, because I don't want to pay the tuition because I want to spend time with them.
Okay, this is
right?
beautiful.
But instead, I'm spending time working.
Okay, so let's keep going down this road. This is why this is really empowering, because what happens is, and we all do this. So me too. I mean, I identify things like this in myself all the time, where it's like we see all these limitations, and then that's what becomes the reality in our life, and then we just go with it, and we don't really think about it anymore. So let's take that example. You mentioned some things in that you want. What are those things? Let's pull those out. This goes to the star charting. Okay, but we'll pull the things out of that. This is a have to here where we're going to pull the want tos out of the It's like alchemy.
I
We're boiling that
want
down.
my kids to have an education.
Beautiful.
And I want to spend time with them.
Beautiful. Okay. Okay. That is the focus. Okay. So obviously everything in life that is not quite perfect, if you want to call that, which is lots of things, are just opportunities for us to empower ourselves or to find ways of change, or I'm going to say improvement, but that's, again, authentically, that's from your own perspective, whatever improvement means. So by looking at what you want in those two regards, if you sat with that, first of all, you might see other possibilities to get both those things that you want. And you might be moving in that direction just by thinking about it. The other thing is, since you do want them to have an education and you haven't found a better way, a more optimal way to do it at this point, does it still make sense that you're really doing that because you want to? Even though it's not the optimal way that you would do it, you're doing it because you don't see a better alternative. So you're still doing it because you want to.
Yeah. No, I think it makes it easier to be motivated and have better morale and all of that stuff because you want the end goal. But if there were a better alternative that allowed me to get paid more, work less hours, then I can spend time with my kids and pay their tuition.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So, but it's still boiled down from your values. Like if you see that the seed of that is still that you want them to have an education, then it takes the feeling of something else controlling you, because something else controlling you is really just another desire in you. If you think about it, that have to is just something else in you. It could be a shame thing, like, well, I have to because everyone will think I'm bad if I don't. Or it could be, I really want to do something else, right? Those are the two other things that make you feel like you have to. And so in that case, all the power comes back to you when you see that you're actually doing it because you want to and are not afraid to see that there could be other ways, just focusing on the things that you want to move in that direction. But it's still based on, ultimately, you wanting to do it. Okay, so now we're going to talk directly and really identify the victim thinking. And we're going to do the same thing with that picture concept, where it's going to turn something around in you. And once you feel that and once you recognize it, you're going to be more authentic and you're going to be more empowered. And you're going to feel it in yourself happen even as you're talking to yourself and doing this mental exercise. Victim thinking. You may be someone out there who feels like you always attract that same person who's abusive. You know, you may have a friend. We'll just say it's a friend if it's too hard to accept that it's actually you. Who, this always happens to me. Right when you're about to do something good and then something bad happens, or, whatever it is, it's something else in the universe just happens and it just ruined your day. It ruined your life.
Like, the bad stuff always happens to me. Why does this shit keep happening? Like, the worst stuff always happens to me. I'm always losing everything. If I ever try, it never works out. All of that stuff.
Yeah. I think we've all said that before. Well, here's the interesting thing. Let's keep thinking about that. Now, Soul Mirror, if the universe is really a reflection of you, what does that belief also have to do with? In other words, if you are saying this, it's a belief and it is a value. Believe it or not, it's actually a value, but it's also a belief and a value of yourself and in yourself, which means we'll let that sit for a while. What thoughts come to your mind when you think about that?
Well, I think the first thing that I realized is that, holy crap, I'm giving, like, if I get into that mindset of like, I have to, I'm letting people down. Like, what if they're understaffed, or what if they have these expectations that I'm going to show up, but I'm sick, and like, can I push through being sick? Now you can't with COVID. And I think that really forced us to realize, like, oh, self-care is important. That's a little tidbit, a belief, a value of mine is that self-care is important. But also, when you switched it to like, I want, then in my mind, like, I physically felt that, and I kind of fought it for a minute, a little bit of resistance, because the inner victim or whatever that's like, no, 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 I need to serve everyone else. Like, it needs to be good for everyone else. It has to be convenient for everyone else, not for me. And if it's not convenient for everyone else, then I've let everyone down and I'm a failure, right? That's the victim inside of me. And I would even say that that's a protector, like a protector self, trying to protect me from bad emotions or negative emotions or strong emotions.
Or negative perception of yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's just like, it switched from that to, well, I do have these dreams and I do have these goals, and I guess I'm not letting this job go because it serves something to fulfill me in some way. It fulfills my creative part in some way. It fulfills my desire to have interactions, to teach, to guide. It fulfills my, like, et cetera, et cetera. So it has all these fulfilling aspects, or it can help me have a reliable paycheck, right? That's something important, is to know what money to expect so you can budget. And that could hypothetically pay for kids' tuition. It could pay for my own tuition. It could pay for a spa day. It could pay for a trip. It could pay for my dream home with lots of land, like there's so much that it could do. And so then what I noticed is, keep me on track if you need to, but what I noticed is going from that, oh crap, I'm letting everyone down, I'm such a horrible person, I have to go to work, I should go to work, I don't want to go to work. And I'm realizing when I say I don't want to go to work, that's actually me saying I want to go to work, but it's not fulfilling everything that I need it to.
That's
right?
beautiful.
But if I switch that to that I want to go to work, then I can see everything it is fulfilling. And then I'm in control of whether or not I stay or I leave.
100%, girl. 150%.
Because, like, if I don't go, that's holding them accountable, right? Like, they have to figure it out and do it themselves instead of relying and being codependent. I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe, obviously, like, I'm not saying go do this at your work. Don't hold a strike. Don't, like, slough or whatever.
But
like,
you know what else? We're also not saying don't stay with your job. We're not saying anything to do, really.
Yeah, no, it's up to you guys, like,
exactly.
to determine where you're at and if it fulfills you.
Yeah, 100%. That's the beauty of it. The message is going to come from within you. That is exactly what authenticity is. And when you feel that in you, that picture starts to change. The victim mentality starts to drop. You start to realize you're the universe, which means you take responsibility for everything. So back to that thought of, if you constantly say things like, this always happens to me and it's always bad, or something always happens.
Like, why try? Because the worst thing always happens.
Right.
Or it never works out anyway. Like, that is completely giving other people control.
It is. And you know what else is really interesting about that?
Instead of taking that control.
It's true. It's also actually powerfully of your own doing and self creating that in your life.
You're taking the control away from yourself.
Yeah.
By trying to control.
That's right. And interestingly enough, it is actually a demonstration that you are so powerful, because when you finally see it for what it is, when that picture flips in your mind and you realize how powerful you are, you realize you don't have to use your power for that lesson anymore.
No, there's better things out there.
Yeah.
Just, be wise. But there's better things out there for everyone.
Yeah, the victimhood drops. And it may not be an immediate thing. It may take time. Totally fine, because there's no judgment upon you. You are the universe. The feminine awareness, again, let's go back to the masculine and feminine. Your masculine self-awareness just means your singular identity. Whether you're a man, a woman, transgender, it doesn't matter. We're all God essence right here in the world. So your masculine identity is just your singular identity. You have a name. Now let's use your feminine understanding and wisdom to know that even though you have a separate identity, you are at the same time the whole universe. So
like, we're all connected, like, I'm just thinking about meditations that I lead, or the chakra system, or theories in different religions all around the world and belief systems. It's It's that belief that we're all connected, that there's a divine nature within each of us, which is the singular, but that divine nature is connected through like this spiritual life force, like we all have life.
Totally.
Right? And therefore we're all connected.
Yeah.
And that's like the human aspect, but it also connects us to like plants and animals and everything.
It is so true.
So that's the feminine, right?
It is, absolutely. Okay. That feminine in you, which is in all of us, whether you're man, woman, transgender, or doesn't matter. I mean, we all have that in us. And so that symbolic feminine understanding, draw that out. The world will change for a better place by far if we do that. We'll all be more empowered. So these are just the concepts I feel as we look inside ourselves and we start to look at it from that point, we start to realize that the rest of the universe really is you. It's all of us, but it's you. So as you change within, so the mirror, your soul mirror changes from without. And it starts with, and it starts and ends or continues forever with authenticity, with that understanding. And it's such a simple concept. If you really dig down, empowerment is authenticity, the way I look at it.
Even though definition, like dictionary definition, they're not exactly the same, but the way that I choose to see it, and we had this whole conversation last night, is that empowerment happens through authenticity and authenticity happens through empowerment. Like you can't have one without the other. That's personally how I see it.
Yeah.
So I think they're symbiotic, but you view them as synonymous in the soul mirror method.
Yeah. So either way you look at it, unlock that inside yourself. You have the power within you. You have the universe within you. You are the creator of the universe and all within, because we all are. We're all a part of God.
And we're all creating our life experience
Absolutely.
too. Like you choose how you experience this life. Do you want to experience it in fear of yourself and others, or do you want to experience it in love and confidence and just kind of being in control of your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And so thinking again, other tools to help, think of your identities and really think of that. You are a singular person. That's very important. So you, singular individual out there with a name, yeah, you're a very important person. No one can say you're not important, actually. I mean, people can say it, but they're the ones with an incorrect perception of the universe. Here's another tool, by the way, that helps combat victimhood, shame, or have-tos. If anyone else has a perception of you that implies that you are less than, or not enough, or not good enough, or flawed, that's a big one. Always realize that that other person is literally projecting their own image of themselves on you, because they have no power to really create you into anything. You're the one that has that power. Doesn't matter if that other person is a PhD of 50 million degrees of whatever, trying to tell you who you are or say something about you. You're the literal expert on you. And no one else is an expert on you. Literally, nobody except for you. That's how valid you are. Your life experience is 100 million% valid because you're the universe. You're part of God right here. So if someone else comes to you and says anything that makes you start feeling like a victim, and I'm not going to say makes you start feeling like a victim, because nothing can make you do anything, honestly.
But if you perceive it as something that could take root, and plant a seed of victimhood thought processes or self-talk in you, then you can choose to realize,
and the actual truth of what is happening is that other individual is projecting their own soul mirror on you, their own perception of the universe and themselves.
Yeah, and that's a very real reality, and it's valid to them, but it doesn't have to be your valid experience of life. It doesn't have to be your reality. And I guess that's what we're here to say in every single episode, but especially in the last episode, in this episode, where we're focusing on shame and the victim mindset, is that you don't need to be an enabler. You don't need to tear yourself down in order to be acceptable. All you need to do is take accountability see your divine nature, and create the path that you want, like create that life. Because if you are, I guess you could want a life of victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do. They're not ready to let it go, but it's because it serves them in some way.
You just said it. It's the same thing, actually. If you are living a life of victimhood, it is absolutely 100% because you want it.
Yeah, or you don't know how to get out of it. Maybe you don't even realize it.
Yeah, but it's for the reasons we said.
Yeah.
It's serving you. So you don't even have to look at the life of victimhood in a shameful way, because that is another thing that happens. We think, oh, I'm a victim. Now I feel bad about having victim mentality. Oh, it's like, it's this spiral of thinking, which is just erroneous, because the minute you see yourself and you understand who you are, that picture just flips.
Yeah, well, just like the picture flipped earlier in the work example, like everyone has had those mornings that they wake up and they're like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Like, I have to go to work and all of that stuff. But really, it's like, well, we could flip that. If you really do need that job and that job is fulfilling to you, then instead of focusing on having to do it, focus on how it's serving you. Why do you want to do it? Why are you wanting to keep it in your life? And then that changes the perspective. It also puts you in control. And then I think this leads perfectly into example phrases of self-talk and self-thoughts, and working with my clients personally on how to reframe how they speak about themselves to others, etc., in a way that I had to learn, that my therapists have been helping me to learn, and I'm still learning. And that would be to empower yourself and to realize that you are in control, and things may happen in life that other people do that are out of your control, but your life experience is in your control.
Yeah. We can even take this to an extreme example, which I like to do, actually. Because you may think, there may be a listener there who's like, no, but okay, what if someone came up to you with a gun, pointed at your head and said, give me your money or I'll kill you? And then you do.
Which happens.
Yeah, it does happen. So you give them the money. Someone might say, well, yeah, I had to. The dude was going to shoot me. What do you think?
Yeah, that is a really extreme example. We don't have to, but we want to live. We value living. And so then we do, right?
Ding. Yes.
It's a survival thing. And a lot of times, we could go to relationships too. The reason that people stay in relationships that place them in a victim mindset and they become enablers is a form of survival. There's something in that relationship that they're getting that fulfills a value for them. It fulfills a need. It fulfills a want. So,
or a self-perception.
Yeah,
which is like that. Usually it's like I'm not good enough, and I will never find someone that's good for me. I will never.
Nobody's ever gonna want me.
Yeah.
I'm trash. I'm blah 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 blah. I'm never good enough, and that's just not true. Right? Like we are. If we believe that we are talented and worth a lot and all of this stuff, yes, there is practice, but it just starts with believing, you know?
And oftentimes in those situations, then we find someone who confirms our belief. And if we find someone that doesn't confirm our belief and actually treats you nicely, for example, let's just take this same example. Even you might, deep inside yourself, that you might not be comfortable with that. You might not be okay.
Well, you might be comfortable with being unsafe.
Yes, you're more comfortable with being
because
unsafe.
It's predictable.
And it also confirms what you believe, which means look how much control and power you have in your own life, even though you're the victim thinking.
Yeah, so it's this weird, twisted thing that, it doesn't make sense logically, but it makes sense psychologically.
Right.
And emotionally, that in some cases, people choose to be with a more aggressive individual because they believe that that's what they deserve. They don't deserve any better. No one else is going to want them. But also, it's predictable. They know the worst that can happen. They know what to expect from day to day, even if what to expect is unpredictable in a sense. You're walking on eggshells or whatever, but you're more comfortable doing that than someone being too nice to you because you're your trauma mind is just like, no, like if someone's being nice, that's a red flag, you
right.
know?
And
then you run for the hills and you look for what you know.
Right.
What you know is that situation.
And it's also what confirms what you believe, which is what your power is. Once you see that's your power doing that, you realize you are powerful.
Yeah, and you could use that power for something else.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you could be the one in more control, right? Like, if we're talking an abuser versus an enabler, right? Or we're talking an abuser versus a victim mentality. Both people are insecure. They're just different manifestations of insecurity. So, I mean, we talked about this in the shadow self episode, right? That both of them are an element of your shadow self. However, as a person who could be abusive, which is everyone, or a person that could be a victim, which is everyone, we can choose to change our thoughts to empower ourselves. And if we are empowered and if we are confident and if we are balanced in that way, we are less likely to be an abuser or to be a victim. We are less likely to manifest in that way and therefore bring and invite more of that into your life, which is what you were saying, is that, you know, if you believe yourself to be a victim, you're going to go and find it, right? And if you believe yourself to be an abuser, you're going to go find a victim. If you believe yourself to be someone who deserves to be treated well, it might take longer, but you're going to find it, you know?
And you know what's interesting?
You're going to find someone that will treat you well.
That's true. It may not even take longer. No joke.
Yeah, I guess as soon as you're ready to let go, it can come into your life.
That's true. Interestingly, all of this goes back to, so changing that thought frame to what you want. That's number one. What do you want? Everything in your life, boil that down and find out why you want to. It makes a whole different list. You put that over there. That's where the star charts are. You can do this in your journal. Focus on those things. When you start looking at the things you want in life, and that really becomes the pinnacle of it, it sounds as though you're being selfish. Some people might say, oh, but now I'm just being selfish. I'm not thinking about others. Not true.
No, you have to think of yourself before you can think of others. Like my grandmother, she would always say, like, you have to have your first $1 million before you can be a philanthropist. Like, you have to have $1 million for yourself to set yourself up, to set your family up, to make sure that you're secure and that you don't empty your cup, right? You have to be able to have something to give.
Yeah. So there's important things. I mean, this would go back to the balancing side of it. Whatever you do, just realize you have the power. So when we speak of what you want to do, if you feel balanced, if you understand your masculine, if you understand your feminine and you're working on that, and if you're really digging down to what you want, then everything you want to do is going to be for the better good of yourself and all of humanity and the universe. If you really think of it that way, because both are you. And so in that way, doing what you want in the most selfish way is great because it's selfish for you, but equally balanced with selfish for the universe and others. And that is the empowerment of it. That's how both selves become empowered by you being authentic. Your self, your masculine, and also your feminine, the whole universe is empowered by you just being authentic, because it's this ascension process that we hear about, raising our vibration and becoming something higher. It's where we
becoming
start to
more holy, right? Like,
yeah.
It really doesn't matter what belief system, even if you're atheist.
Yeah.
We all want to achieve a better version of ourselves.
Amen.
Which,
even if you're atheist, I said amen.
And we would hope that we want to achieve a better version of the world and the community that we live in.
Truly, which is ourself. So you change yourself on the inside and you change yourself in the world. Change the world. The soul mirror changes along with you. We all do. Because I am you, you are me.
Yeah, I mean, you see it happen like when you're in real estate, right?
Yeah.
Where somebody starts mowing their lawn. or somebody starts pulling the weeds, or somebody starts painting their house or whatever, then suddenly everyone does. It's weird. It is this really strange thing. And maybe in some cases it's a very competitive keeping up with the Joneses thing, which is not healthy. But I think it's also this realization that, oh, there is something I can do.
Yeah.
You know, at least for me, that's how it is. And I would hope that that's how it is in most cases.
Yeah. Just, our communities, there's a lot of diversity in the community. And I think the connection is going to start happening more. There may be people that you don't identify with. You may be in a straight community or a very religious community. And you may not identify with people who may have different sexual preferences, or who may be just discovering what their sexual preferences are, or who may have different political concepts. We're going to talk about, by the way, all the down and dirty controversial stuff in another podcast. But for now, the connective process is just realizing that if everyone's you, let's just start with that low-hanging fruit, because this also smashes and obliterates victim thinking and shame. Everyone's you. So start with someone who's just a little different than you.
Yeah,
diversity.
And what you surround yourself with, too.
Yeah.
I think that if you have an idea in mind of who you want to be, then surround yourself with those people.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is like a start, right?
Yeah.
Because then each person that you surround yourself with brings you more strength, but also it's a greater power to change people because you're all strengthening each other. Mm-hmm. And then each individual person is going out into the world, doing their career, doing their parenthood, doing their partnership, doing their whatever they're doing, and making a difference.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, thoughts. We never got through thoughts.
Oh.
Like phrases. What
right.
are some examples? So, Rett, what is an example of, and this is what I want to do. I want to have you give an example of a thought, and then we're going to change the wording of it from being a victim thought to an empowered thought. So, what is one that you might have told yourself in a previous life? To clarify this question and where it's coming from, I want to give a context for our listeners as well as for both of us. And I would like maybe both of us to give an example, actually. So we have all, like every single person, I firmly believe, has been in an imbalanced or unhealthy interaction or relationship. And maybe that's the best way to put it. Some people, it might have been an abusive relationship, but for the sake of respecting everyone and seeing, all of that, we're going to just say an imbalanced relationship. So, Rett, if you were in an imbalanced relationship, hypothetically or realistically, maybe draw from your memories or whatever, what would you have told yourself?
Yeah, so I guess I could share an example from, this is a long time ago. We're talking college days. So I dated someone way back in college days who I didn't know at the time because I was very young and didn't know what I was doing, but exhibited abusive behaviors. And me being now, again, looking in hindsight way back then, I see how my own mindset really just, I guess, invited that or allowed it or continued to reaffirm whatever belief I had in my mind. But the thought process that I might have said way back then would have been like, well, yeah, I'm not good enough for any better treatment, so I have to do this. This person I'm dating is really cool and they're really pretty and, so it's okay.
Well, and I think that's really what it is you're justifying their behavior instead of requiring that they take accountability and not letting them treat you that way.
Yeah, that's right. That'd be so. If I was to have the SoulMirror method in my mind back then, and it's still a difficult process because you really have to believe this. You really have to believe in yourself. But I do believe the journaling exercises and just looking within myself, understanding that the whole universe is me, and that my singular self is just as important, then I would have realized and said things like, no, I'm important. I am important. I deserve treatment that is if someone's telling me bad things about myself or name calling or whatever, that's not reflective of who I believe of myself, because I'm God in the universe, just like everyone is, and just like even that individual is. So it's not like I'm God, worship me, but it's more like I'm important. Treat me good. Treat me well.
Yeah, because we all have that divine within us, and we all have that potential for greatness, and it doesn't matter where we're at right now, because we're all imperfect beings, but we all deserve to be treated with respect, and we all deserve to be treated well. And so a thought then for you would have probably been like, I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
And this is already better than I think I deserve, so I'm going to take it. Whereas how would you turn that exact thought into something that's empowering?
Well, you know what else?
Like, I deserve better.
And not only that, but the situation I'm in now is of my own creation.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, in that you enabled that.
Absolutely. By taking full responsibility, it is the most empowering thing anyone can ever do. And there's no shame involved with it. Like, even if you've been in, let's just pretend you've been in that relationship forever, I don't know, years and years and years, there's still no shame in it. And there's really nothing other than to say, hey, wait, okay, this is serving some purpose you're doing it, you're allowing it, whatever. So there's the beauty in it for you. If you want to change it, you can. If you want to learn from all those things, you can, definitely. It can still only be an empowering thing, and I mean that. Now, once you take the step to change now, then you can really have the full empowerment of it. But just seeing it for what it is gives you some power to reframe that and realize that.
Yeah. So an example from my life would be like, if I were being in a victim mindset, and this is something that actually happened, right? And my good friend handled it pretty well. I would feel like they gave me a tip, and I appreciated it, and I want to share that. So I wanted to hang out. I felt like I needed more company. I felt like I needed emotional support. So I thought I was being really clear, and I was like, hey, I need emotional support. I really want support on this day and this day, or this week in general, but I don't know, does that work for you? And, then I started going back on myself, and I was like, oh, but if it's not okay, don't worry about it. That was the victim speaking, right? And so this friend was like, hey, I wasn't sure what you needed or when you needed it, because you were not direct. So what you could have said is, hey, I need some company and emotional support. Can you come over on Tuesday and hang out? And then just leave it at that. And then it's like, they could say yes, or they could say no, or they could say, maybe let me get back to you. Like, it's not, I don't know, like in my head, I was expecting this like big, like emotional lash out, just because my victim mindset was so in power at the time. And it didn't need to be. I was giving them power over me that they didn't need to take, And so that for me, was a very, very clear example of reframing how you even ask someone. It's like, be direct, be clear, tell them what you want, because otherwise they're not going to know. Nobody can mind read, and if you're assuming things about them, those assumptions might not be real. And anyway, so that was a big learning experience for me. And then I also have another thought. And I think that this is something that we've talked about actually, is saying thank you and receiving compliments. And I'm like the worst at that. And the victim would be, so the victim self would be like, maybe, will you give me a compliment so we can role play this?
Okay. Kat, you have such wonderful insights on so many things. It's mind blowing.
I don't know. Like, you're really nice, thank you, but I, like, and
Right.
that would be like the victim. So it would be like, oh, you're too kind. I'm, like, I think you're just a super nice person and all
And if
that.
I'm a narcissist, I'd be like, yeah, I am so kind. Thank you for reaffirming my insecurity of myself. I'm not. Yes, keep feeding that to me. I'm kind. I'm good.
And I mean, even if you were a narcissist, it would still be me invalidating you.
Yeah.
Right? So by me rejecting that compliment, I'm not only preventing me from accepting it emotionally and spiritually, I'm also preventing you from feeding and nurturing others. Right?
That's awesome. Yes.
And so it's invalidating you and your perception and your reality. And you might actually believe that I am really insightful, and I might not. But if I say thank you and I accept it graciously, which is not invalidating it, right? I think a lot of us think that being polite is like, oh, you're too kind. But in reality, it's like, no, that's not being polite. That's not being gracious. Being gracious would be like, thank you. I really appreciate your thoughts, or I really appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time, to let me know. And, like, because the more that you accept those things, the more it empowers you instead of like pushing it off. And it also empowers them too. And they're going to want to continue to give because it's being received instead of, like they might perceive you as ungrateful. If you're like, no, you're too kind. It's not true. Like, I'm actually a horrible person, like then they're going to feel horrible, Yeah. And they're going to be like, wow, this is really uncomfortable. Maybe I'm just not going to compliment you anymore. I don't know if any of that made sense, but that was sense. Like what came to mind.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's very insightful. See, I really meant it. You really say it's just amazing, insightful things all the time.
Thank you.
No problem. See, we just demonstrated that. It works wonderfully.
It does. And then you can move on. There's no emotional baggage. There's no like ifs. There's no shoulds. There's no have tos. There's nothing. It's just literally just say it how it is.
I should have had to say that differently, actually. Just kidding. Did you see how jarring that was? Never go back.
I know. Oh my gosh. Okay, so maybe let's do one more example. So I just gave 2 examples. Will you give one more example from reality?
Okay.
What is a real thought that you have had recently?
Sometimes when I'm going downstairs in the morning, Jack looks up at me and he squints his eyes, and I feel like he's judging me. And I start to feel like I'm just not a good enough owner for him. And he looks over at his cat toys, and I think, do I have enough of them? And then when he meows, sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm so not Jack. And then he follows me everywhere, like there's something wrong with me. It just makes me cry. I have to. I don't
Even
know.
right now, he's ignoring you.
He is. He's just sleeping on the chair. See, am I good? I'm not.
He's turning his ears away from you. You're too loud for him.
Oh my gosh, I'm abusive. I'm an abusive cat owner.
Neglectful.
I am.
Okay, so how do we change that? How do we change that thought process?
Usually I just throw a cat toy at him and scratch his ears. Just kidding. I'm mentally devoid of any more thoughts right now because that's a good question.
Well, it's hard to switch from the teacher to like the student, right?
True.
And I think right now, because this is your method, this is your book you're writing, like
fair enough.
You're in this mode of like, I
sharing
practice
my
this. Well, you do. I mean, you are like a testimony is what you know, right? So I don't know. You know this. And so it's hard for you to switch back into that victim mindset, I think.
I guess that's a very good point. Okay. Well,
So I guess what I'm asking is, can you switch back to that victim mindset or go back to a time where you were living as a victim?
Oh, there are many times of that for sure. So that's true. I mean, yeah, I can think of an example. Religiously, I know that there were many times that I felt like I had to do things like either follow certain rules or say certain things in a lesson format or in a, from the pulpit. And really, no one was saying, no one is forcing me to. Really, I don't have to. Even though there may be like a pressure. Sure, there is a pressure, right? There is a pressure coming from somewhere. That pressure is really just me.
Well, you're pressuring yourself, right? You're creating these expectations on yourself.
Exactly. And driven out of this need for acceptance, which is also just in me, and whatever beliefs that I'm accepting in myself. So very much in my inauthentic life, I feel like doing things and saying things that I didn't really feel authentically about. Was that anyone else's fault?
No.
Right. I mean, can I say, well,
but you
to.
felt like it at the time. You felt like you had to do it. You felt
but
like,
I wanted to. Now I realize it, because I wanted acceptance. I wanted to be
right,
like in the religious community of, Now that doesn't mean everything, because there were lots of things that obviously, I mean, the people they're wonderful people in my old religion and in my old church groups, and so I legitimately enjoyed people and connections and all that. But yeah, I just think in a lot of ways though,
but you were being inauthentic in your personal beliefs because you wanted to be accepted.
Absolutely. And so I reframing that to saying, oh, I did want to do that actually. And why? Because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to fit in. All that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can do things authentically in a religious context. We could do things authentically in a work context. We can do things authentically in a relationship context. It could be any context, and we can be authentic. It's really just, how are we thinking about it? Are we thinking about it as like, are we apologizing all the time? Are we constantly feeling like we're not good enough? Are we telling ourselves that we're not good enough and that we have to do this or else, right? Or are we empowering ourselves and saying, I want to do this because this is what I get out of it. I want to do this because it upholds a value, or it fulfills me, or whatever. And so, like, if you are practicing religiously, we would hope that you're practicing authentically as well, and that it fulfills you in more than just acceptance.
Beautifully said. I think the next podcast could be more about the cost of authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
Conformity versus...
Well, yeah, I think there's definitely an obvious one there, with the example that you brought up, is that if you're not practicing the same way as your group, then some people in the group might ostracize you.
That's right.
Or reject you, or, that sort of thing. I think that everyone has experienced that to some degree from childhood. In elementary school, like we have different friend groups, and if we don't conform, then we get left out.
Which, the beauty of that is, think SoulMirror. Why is it that when you change, suddenly in your mind, you lose friends? Well, actually, no. You've changed. Your outside world is changing.
You're gaining new friends.
Actually, you really are. Think of that. Then go back to your feminine awareness. You may have lost the 20 friends. Let's say it's 20 friends in your group. How many people are in the universe that are still another part of you? I mean,
so much. And
there's like billions of people on the planet.
Yeah, and you really haven't lost them. You're just choosing to, and they're choosing. We're both choosing, right? Yeah. Like, you are choosing to change. And same thing in relationships. If you end up making a decision to leave an imbalanced, unhealthy, toxic relationship, then that's awesome. Yeah. Like, all the empowerment and authenticity to you. And I hope that you don't jump back into the same thing, But if you do, it's probably because you're finding survival there. You're finding safety. You're finding predictable, unpredictable, you're comfortable in the unsafe. But really focus on what change do you want in your life, and self-acceptance at the same time.
That's right.
That to me is authenticity. It's like, I know that I'm imperfect, and I'm okay with that. I also know that I have goals, and I'm working towards that. So you're not stagnating. You're not moving backwards. You're not apathetic. Just self-acceptance to the extreme, you're not just feminine, like, nothing matters. Everyone's perfect regardless. It's like, no. We all have things we're working on. And that's a verb, right? That's an action. We're working on it.
Yeah.
And we want to be accepted where we are at, not for the potential person that we could be, right?
That's absolutely
when we
right.
get there, the people who will accept us will accept us. But right now, we also want people who will accept us where we're at.
Absolutely.
And we are empowered to find that.
For sure.
Whether that's work, whether that's school, whether that's friends, family, relationships,
Yeah.
etc. I think it's important to hold on to your responsibilities and your duties. That's part of not being apathetic. Don't take it to the extreme. You know.
And I think like when you finally realize that there's nothing to be afraid with what you want, literally, like let that sit.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely nothing wrong
Like
with it.
you can let go of that shame.
You can literally direct your life by what you want. And it doesn't mean, I mean, when you really understand this, then it's actually the most beautiful thing ever. There's nothing, I mean, there's a lot of balance to that. So
and
I think
establishing your values can really help with finding that balance and finding what you want.
Absolutely. So my final saying would be, stop with the shame old thinking and start with you. And remembering who you are. Think of the feminine and masculine, where your strength is. Like, for example, if you've been good at helping other people, then let's think about this starting with who you are from your singular self, your masculine identity, even if you're a woman. Why don't you start to realize, hey, okay, I am a person, or vice versa. But the point is, know who you are and go from there. Yeah. And empower yourself through authenticity.
You are now empowered authentically. Be yourself, you guys. Use these tools. I wish the best to you.
Same.
We'll see you in the next episode. We are so grateful for the listener that sent in feedback and requested this topic. It has turned into 2 fabulous episodes, really, really deep, and we would love to hear from you as well. Feel free to send more suggestions because this is for you as much as it is for us. Contact us at SoulMirror.Health on Instagram or Facebook, or